It's Beyond the Blast Doors, episode 28, a Star Wars podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm one of your hosts, David Amilati. Joined with me, Jesse Buck, David Gilbert, and we are excited today to get this episode underway. A lot of Han Solo talk. We'll also be talking about some stuff happening in the comics. Star Wars 43 dropped last week, and then coming up this week, we have the Thrawn adaptation number 1. We also have Darth Vader number 11, which you're excited about.
Hot diggity.
It's a new arc. It's a new arc, and that's always good. It's a new arc. It's a new start. Before we get started into real talk, though, did you guys see the article about J.J. Abrams blowing off an interviewee because he's so excited about what he's doing for Episode 9?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't hear about that.
He talked a little bit about 9, but I didn't hear him blowing off a interviewee.
So it was with I think it's the website called The Independence, and he's doing this interview, and they ask him. He's there for something else, and they ask him for his thoughts on Episode 9, and you know, with Han Solo coming out, you know, all the hype is real, and he's like, oh, well, actually, you know, I'm going to walk out the door here, I'm going to go right there, and I'm really excited to show you what we've done, and then he left. And
I did see part of it.
And it wasn't like he was rude.
Yes.
He was just like, at this point, there's no way J.J. Abrams can say anything. But I thought it was pretty interesting.
He presented his script 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. He did do that.
Yep.
So he knows something that he thinks is going to work really well. I like your point, though. You think he's going to, like, not retcon, but he's going to, like, course correct.
Oh, absolutely.
Johnson's deviation from his stuff.
First scene, Rose had a heart attack, and Finn feels so bad he goes into a coma. Then the next scene, we get Snoke's walking around looking dapper as ever can be. You know, love Andy Serkis. Then the next scene, we find out that Rey's parents are actually important. Then the next scene, we get the Knights of Ren just destroying stuff with Captain Phasma. I mean, he's just going to retcon everything.
You have to see the Knights of Ren in Episode 9, right, Jesse?
You want to know what my theory is? What
Go
he's
ahead.
going to do? I was going to retcon it. You ready for this?
Yes.
You're going to love it.
Okay.
Luke wakes up from a bad nightmare.
A Super Mario
The whole
Brothers 2
movie.
scenario.
The whole last movie was just a horrible, like, Force nightmare
And
vision.
suddenly this trilogy becomes a quadrilogy.
Wouldn't that be like, okay, so I don't think that has a chance in hell of happening.
I know.
But you know how funny that would be if it was like, here's a new Force power. Like, Luke gets up, he's like, Force apparition, what crap is that? What the hell are all those porgs?
Well, I mean,
I would want, if that happened though, seriously, if that were to happen, I would want a post-credit scene where Luke is in therapy, and he's like surrounded by like Chewie, and he's like, and you were eating these damn porgs, and like you were they were like rotisserie chicken. You were just devouring these porgs. There was this one that I was trying to make the lightsaber activate and kill the one, but I couldn't make it happen. He kept jumping on the lightsaber, and he wouldn't skewer his other friend, and I just like that'd be kind of fun.
well, you know, that thing laid in a box for how many years? I mean, it's the activator switch is bound to be a little off.
I mean, it's got to be like an 80-year-old lightsaber at this point, isn't it? Give or take.
It's got a few decades on it.
50, 60 years maybe?
At least.
Luke's 50 at this point, right?
So
And
30
so-
years, like 20-something years between Return of the Jedi and...
It's 30
Force.
years.
Okay, 30 years.
Yeah.
And then you have like about a decade that the original trilogy takes place in, so now you're at 40 years. 20 years before that takes you to Revenge of the Sith.
So now we're at 60 years.
And then you have probably... It's a 10-year jump between... isn't it a 10-year jump between Clone Wars and Revenge? Or is that only 3? I think that's only 3, but it was 10 between Phantom Menace and Attack. Okay, so somewhere around that.
I mean, this thing's old enough for retirement at this point. It could get benefits.
Well, they broke the damn thing.
And Medicare.
On a serious note, what I would expect out of JJ, I don't think Snoke's dead. There's a reason this guy has been around for a long time. And I don't think Phasma is dead. I know everybody's like, well, she fell into flames. And I'm like, yeah, I think they're going to bring her back. I mean, her armor reflected a blaster bolt, for heaven's sakes. I think it's going to hold up to some heat and high impact. So she may not be pretty looking, but...
Right. There's definitely a chance, but hey, be excited that the director is excited. That's always a really good sign.
Yeah.
So... I mean, yeah, because Rian Johnson was excited about 8, and, you know, think what you may. But, you know, JJ's excited for 9, and now I'm excited for 9.
But you know what's funny? We spent like the first 5 minutes of this podcast talking about Episode 9 and not Solo, which is exactly what one of the articles I was reading about Abrams, where they're saying that Abrams is probably going to start rolling out his Instagram photos of the sets before Solo comes out.
I think that they are actually going to take a few notes from Solo, especially from, like, social media, what Ron Howard was doing. One of the things that got me back in the game real early with this movie when Howard took over was how engaging he was with fans on social media. It goes a long way, and I don't think we can scoff at that. You know, sometimes, you know, I remember in college, professors saying, well, you know, you guys just don't understand the power of social media. okay, here's a proof of how social media is literally free publicity for this movie. Got me hyped. And I want to see JJ do that. I want to see more, because if you go back to 2015 Force Awakens, we did not get a lot of behind-the-scenes sneak peeks leading up to that movie. Very secretive, right? But again, that was the first movie.
You think one of those sneak peek photos will be a cloning facility?
Of a lot of Luke's?
Like Luke's hand floating in a tank or something. Yeah.
I seriously hope not. And with that, let's jump into Real Talk. Real Talk is a segment where we talk about everything that is movie and TV related. This is the saga films, the prequels, the sequel trilogy, the TV series. Whatever you can watch on a TV screen, we're going to talk about it right here on a monitor. I got to work better on that transition. The point is, Han Solo is coming out on Memorial Day of 2018. And Entertainment Weekly last week unrolled all of its exclusive content about the movie.
Ginormous batch of articles.
Anthony Breznican is the guy who does this, and he's done this for Rogue One. He's done this for Force Awakens as well, I believe. And just the man did really well of not having. You don't have to stretch to talk about this movie for a week. There were so many different angles to attack with the Solo movie. And so we got a series of photos. I believe there were 9 photos that we got through this. But I say we just go ahead and dive on in, and we'll just start with that first article. And what I loved about, and David, I think you have the quote pulled up, but they're talking about Han Solo and the approach to Solo in this movie. And it's the fact that this guy, no matter how hard he tries to not be a part of the higher system, that he's out for himself, ultimately the guy has a heart. David, do you have that quote?
Try as he might to live outside the law, to care about nothing, to embody his loner name, he finds himself inexorably pushed and pulled by the tractor beam of his own decency.
No, I believe that is a Anthony line that he wrote. I don't think that's accredited to anybody.
No.
But I think that's great insight. And, it's, of course, accompanied by a really cool cover. The cover, which, we're showing right now, I love the brown jacket that Han's wearing. I love the look of Chewie. They just look right. A joke that we have is that Chewie gets younger with every sequel trilogy film. But here he actually looks like a younger Chewie. That looks good. I like kind of like the swagger that we're kind of seeing with Alden Ehrenreich's approach to Solo. It feels right. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this translates. And of course, I mentioned those 9 other photos. Jesse, I think we're getting a Western movie, and I think that was somewhat suggested through the teaser trailer. But also, when you go through this story, too, Kathleen Kennedy, in a later quote, describes this as he's a gunslinger. He's an outlaw in a way. What do you think about getting a Western vibe Star Wars movie? Because that's a little different.
No, I'm excited about that because, Westerns, you'd be surprised how much actually influenced the original trilogy. So to see some of those elements come back into play. Boba Fett, for example, you're going to laugh and go, Boba Fett. But his shoulder cape is actually a nod towards Clint Eastwood.
Yep.
Really?
Okay, yeah. So, and actually, they snuck it into Empire. You hear the boot spurs. Those are actual boot spurs. Boba, there's no spurs or anything on. So it's kind of like an Easter egg thing there. But Westerns did influence the original trilogy. So to see that kind of come back into play here, and we especially see that in the trailer that we got, where we see him, prepping the blaster and everything to for looks to be like basically a at dawn kind of duel.
I'm really into it because I thought what went so well for Rogue One is they went ahead and they made it a genre type film. It's a war movie.
Yeah.
It's a war movie and it paid off. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a Western type Star Wars movie because I think it makes sense in that galaxy where there are outlaws. It kind of is the Wild West. When I think of the Outer Rim, I've kind of always associated with with the Wild West. And you're exactly right. That frame where he's unbuckling, you're going to have a standoff in this movie, and it's going to be great. The thing that is so interesting in that story, though, is, we talk about this is a Ron Howard-directed film, a Lawrence Kasdan script. Visually now, we've seen the trailer. You're thinking this is going to be one heck of an adventure. But the one question that has been, and it was addressed in this opening article of this weekly series of posts, what is Alden Ehrenreich's acting ability, and is it going to impede the success of this movie? Financially, we already know that this movie has to make a lot of money just to break even, because they essentially made 2 movies. Okay, that's the climate that we're in. So we are going to touch on Alden's acting in just a couple of minutes. But David, was there anything that you wanted to address before we moved on?
Yeah, Kathleen calls this a heist movie, which kind of caught my attention because I do enjoy a good heist movie. You get like Die Hard, the Ocean's 11 movies, Mission Impossibles. So if this is more of a heist movie, that really captures my attention because that's something we haven't really seen in this universe yet.
No, I'm down with you, and it kind of goes with the Western theme that I was talking about just a second ago.
we get it in the trailer. Beckett is like, how do you feel about like, a job? Like he's basically pitching a job in the trailer kind of thing.
We need a crew. What do you think about seeing a fully manned Millennium Falcon? We kind of talked about this last week, but the idea of seeing like a full crew, like 6, 7, 8, 9 people operating every gun on the Millennium Falcon, a full cockpit. What is going like? I want to see how a Millennium Falcon with the appropriate care,
how it's actually supposed to work.
Because I don't think it was the biggest hunk of junk in the galaxy. Clearly from the set images that we got. Oh my God, did you see the paneling that was inside that Falcon before he stripped it all? Oh God, it's so nice. I actually might splurge on the Lego set. I might do it.
EW talks about that at length in the interview with Donald Glover.
Let's do the interview first with Alden, though.
Sure.
Because in there, we get a little behind-the-scenes talk about how he got some help with Harrison Ford.
Before we move on, there's one other thing in the first article that we didn't cover.
What?
And that was they allude that Woody Harrelson's character, which we've been taught is kind of a mentor,
Beckett, yeah.
They say that he has to go up against him. So is he going to flip sides? Is he going to become more of an antagonist? He says the article says Han will have to face off against Woody Harrelson's character and the crime boss Dryden Voss.
Yeah, see, Dryden Voss is, I think, that metal is the masked guy with the feathers, and he has all of his Goonies.
So are we getting a character where Han is going to have to like learn from him and then flip it and then have to, abandon him? And
it's probably a situation where this Beckett guy tries to screw over Han, and it makes him bitter.
Which is completely possible in the Outer Rim territory. So.
Yeah, it would make sense. It would fit. All right, let's go ahead and talk about that Alden Ehrenreich interview that we mentioned ago. Alden Ehrenreich was interviewed by Anthony Bresnikan, and tremendous article. Each one of these articles, top-notch. They really are. And great insight and really gets you excited for these movies. I think what I'm interested in so much is just the cultivizing this character, right? So we know that he had a couple talks with Harrison Ford about the character Han Solo, and not just like, well, kid, when someone talks to you, this is how you have to look at them, but like the origins, like those initial conversations with George. How cool is that Harrison, who has kind of personified himself as a curmudgeon, wanting nothing to do, he was quoted at Star Wars Celebration saying he wanted nothing to do with the Han Solo movie. This guy sat down and took time to talk with Alden Ehrenreich about, what this character has gone through, why he does the things that he does.
Do you think he did it of his own accord, or do you think Disney offered him a shit ton of money?
I think both are possible.
Besides paying for
What do you think, Jesse? Do you think it's possible?
I want to think that potentially, it could be probably a combination of both kind of thing, but at the same time, Harrison is known for some of his, his other work and everything like outside of film. He's flown, I think, helicopters for like rescue and stuff like that, if I recall.
Small airplanes, and crashed a few of them.
Yeah.
On a golf course.
You get my point. He does take part in, charitable events. The thing is, yes, he comes off as kind of a cranky, gruff guy.
Oh, okay. I was trying to
That's where I'm going with this.
I was like, man, where are you going with this?
So I think, maybe he did get some pay to, step onto the set for pointers, but I think, I don't see Harrison as being somebody who wants to see, a young actor, fail. This is Han Solo is an American icon.
I would agree with that. I think what it comes down to is the fact that we saw it in Force Awakens. We talk about it a lot. Is the fact that he fell in love with that character again. He had a good time on set. He enjoyed making that movie, and I think he has that. But he has a heart. I think it's kind of funny sometimes how we do kind of think, oh, he's cranky, oh, he craps on Star Wars. No, he doesn't. He loves this franchise, but it's Harrison Ford, and that's how he handles it. It's how Clint Eastwood talks. He's always sounding so miserable, but that man has an incredible heart. And George Lucas, he has an incredible heart for Star Wars. He just can't direct a Star Wars movie anymore.
Well, Alden called him very supportive and called him really cool to have lunch with.
Yeah.
And Harrison even kind of trolled him a little bit. Alden says that he sat down and said, "Okay, go tell them I told you everything you needed to know and that you can't tell anyone what it is."
That's perfect.
That's Harrison.
And that's perfect. And we don't need to know. Let me just see it on Memorial Day in 2018.
The only input he gave him was how to do the Harrison Ford
the finger point.
Finger point.
Oh, my gosh.
He's going to give him pointers on the point.
That's I think it's really great. And it kind of reminded me of that photo that leaked very early on. I don't know if it leaked, but that photo of Donald Glover with Billy D. Williams in that restaurant. They're in that booth, and they're kind of talking about the Lando character. It kind of reminds me of that. Here's my thing. We know we know Harrison Ford was on set. Is this the acting coach that we've probably been hearing about for the last several months? Everyone's hitting the panic button because Alden Ehrenreich's acting is suspect. Well, maybe it wasn't suspect. Maybe he had an acting coach on set because it was freaking Harrison Ford. What do you think, Jesse?
The thing is again, Han Solo is an iconic movie character. Like you don't want to mess this up, So I mean, I feel like you got to have Harrison Ford there,
right? But are you concerned any longer if the acting coach is just Harrison Ford there, like giving guidance? This is completely different from an acting coach being like, "Listen, when you want to feel the emotion of sadness, you need a frown." You know what I'm saying? There's a difference there.
This side. It is a little bit more confident building kind of thing.
I would hope so.
Was it Howard that brought in the acting coach?
No,
or was it Lord Miller?
I think it was Lord Miller, Kathleen Kennedy, like a group thing, because that rumor was coming out before Ron Howard took over.
Well, I was curious, so I just pulled up Harrison Ford's IMDb, and last year the only movie he had come out was Blade Runner.
Yes,
which was October time frame,
and it was a great movie.
But they would have still been finishing filming back in January, February, March, April when Lord Miller would have still been on the film, because they wouldn't have hit post-production until like 6 months before the movie came out.
Well, Lord and Miller were on it from January until about late April, May, and then Howard came on.
That's when I would have suspected that Blade Runner would still be filming the last bit of their shot,
right?
So he wouldn't be able to get over to a set to do some solo coaching.
It could have been in the works, and then he came over when Ron, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where I am happy that he at least took the time to, sit down and give pointers and everything to make sure that the essence of this character was at least, effectively captured at a younger age.
David, let's go ahead and jump down to the next article that we have. It's the Lando article. It's Donald Glover. David's really excited about it because I think your favorite part might be what Donald Glover does with Lando Calrissian.
Oh,
in
absolutely
this movie.
not.
Really?
No.
I thought you were all about it a couple of weeks ago.
No.
So now, okay, so you read the article.
So for starters, Lando's not my favorite character.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people have a love for Lando, but I think he's two-timing. I think he's a backstabbing friend. And I never latched onto him as a kid when I watched these movies. I don't identify with him. To me, he's more of like an antagonist or a neutral antagonist than he is a hero. So I'm not an overly big fan of the Lando character. Donald Glover, I'll be honest, I've only seen him in Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I know he's done a whole bunch of different things with music. Wasn't he on SNL a couple times? Was he hosting or was he?
Well, yeah, but he's on that Atlanta show, Atlanta show.
Never seen it.
He's incredible. He's the Childish Gambino. The guy can rap. He did stand up. The guy is one of the top 5 most talented actors.
So as I've been learning more about Donald Glover by doing this podcast and doing my research, it sounds like he's an outrageously talented individual, but my only experience with him is watching his hand get webbed to a trunk lid and complaining about his ice cream to Tom Holland. So I'm told that I should be really excited for this character, but I don't know the actor very well, and I've never been very fond of the character. So I'm not trashing Lando. I'm just not excited for Lando, but I do want to see what Donald Glover is going to bring to this character because of the reputation he's bringing with him.
Now, what I like about what's in this article, and it kind of piggybacks off of what David said, is inside the article, he's asked, what did you learn from Billy D. Williams? that was depicted in that photo, and he's talking about how, what do I do? And Billy D would say things like, well, just be charming. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I can try and do that. And he's like, don't be eccentric, but have an eclectic taste. He's a little sophisticated, which... Yeah, that's kind of Lando. He's a charmer. Yeah. He's kind of fancy. He's suave.
He's a smooth talker. He's got, he's like the, third person we see with a cape kind of thing. Just look at him on Cloud City kind of thing. As far as the character Lando as a whole goes, I'm kind of with David. To me, when he's first introduced, he's more of like a side character, and then he kind of takes on a more important role in Return of the Jedi and everything. So the thing is I am actually kind of interested in that story arc potentially being presented here. Is what kind of friendship does Han and Lando actually have? Are we actually going to see that be kind of a more of like an acquaintance kind of thing? Like, at what point does Han get the Falcon? Is actually the new owner. What causes this to kind of, because it seems like they part ways. Obviously, they haven't seen each other in years, kind of thing.
Oh, I'd agree with that. Well, now you read the article, the part where he's talking about how much he loves the Millennium Falcon. I thought this was really cool, David. Where he's talking about how the Millennium Falcon is so nice under Lando's care that when they would end scene and they'd be like, you can go over there. He's like, I'm just gonna go in Lando's suite because it was that comfortable. He talks about how he would go and read books and such. I'm really excited about how I want to see what the Millennium Falcon does with Lando. How good is he with the Falcon? Like, is Han the better pilot with a Falcon, or is Lando? And then, he took care of that thing so much. That ship, again, was not the biggest hunk of junk in the galaxy during that time. So I'm excited to see Lando existing on the Falcon. And also, the Falcon, through the trailer and through these articles, is becoming, again, a character of its own. And, for us, it's kind of a nostalgic beat, right?
Well, I actually saw a really interesting meme picture, and it was Chewie had just taken a shower, and he's soaking wet, and then the next picture is him, shaking all the water off like a dog, and that's how, it went from sparkly to dirty kind of thing. But, no, I get what you're saying, because, Lando seems to be kind of, he's more like... He's a scoundrel, but I don't think he's a smuggler in that sense. I think he's more about one of those types where let's make a business deal kind of thing here. Yeah, it's a shady business deal, and that's how he makes his money. Where and maybe that's kind of the difference between the two characters. Yeah. There is Lando's kind of a little. I don't want to say that Han isn't intelligent. He's intelligent. He's street smart intelligent, but Han is more like businessman. Shady corporate,
Oh, Lando for sure. Han gets by on street smart and common sense. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Now, also in the story, we get confirmed that Lando is playing Sabacc. Is there anything, David, that we haven't discussed, do you think, in this article before we need to move on?
In this article...
I think we pretty much wrapped it up. We have that cool article. Again...
He talks about the puppeteers a little bit in here.
There was a language barrier, right?
Yeah.
They didn't speak English.
When they're playing the card game, Sabacc, the alien he's playing is a two-headed puppet that doesn't speak English or common or whatever the...
See, I think that would be such a fun, challenging aspect of being in a Star Wars movie, because you're having to, interact with aliens. They aren't going to speak English. They're not going to speak Spanish or a human language. I think that would be fascinating.
He did say there's some really good outtakes from the game Sabacc that he's playing with the...
I hope they put that on a deleted scene section. I'd love to hear it.
And then here's my thing: is in EU, Jesse, was Sabacc ever explained? Do we know?
Kind of. I know it's been referenced. If I remember correctly, that's how Lando loses.
No. I know that. I'm saying, do the rules of Sabacc ever get explained? Is it like Magic the Gathering, where I have to put mana on the table, or is it more like, I just have a hand and it's a it's a numbers game?
I've always kind of looked at a little. Actually,
So we don't know if it's been explained.
It's on Wikipedia.
Okay, wonderful.
As I'm trying to read.
Does it reference the rules though, or it just talks about how it's the game that they played? Because I don't think that I've ever seen rules for the game. What would be interesting to me is...
So it's comprised of face cards, including the Idiot, the Queen, the Evil One, and the Star. And then there's 4 suits of 14 cards. so that makes it a bigger deck than our standard 52. The Sabacc player's goal is to win the pot by collecting a hand of cards that totaled positive or negative 23. The hand could only be beaten by a rare unbeatable hand called the Idiot's Array. So it gives
Kind of
us
sounds
some
like
of
a
it.
mixture of poker and blackjack.
Then there's Carillion Spike version of it, which uses a pair of 6-sided dice, which maybe that's what Han has. It says that's where he won the Millennium Falcon, was a game of Carillion Spike Sabacc. So Han kept the golden dice used to win that game.
So I think this would be like a really good reference for what we might see played in the movie. But what's the source on all this stuff? Because what I would be kind of curious about is if the source material is EU stuff. I wonder if they use this as an influence. It's not a big deal. It's not something to get hung up on. But if you wanted to know what Sabacc is, more details about the game, you just got it. And again, if you want to go back on it, you can find it on Wikipedia.
And there's a variety of different sources. Star Wars Rebels has some references to it. Chewbacca comic from a certain point of view novel that came out last November.
Right.
Star Wars Rebels magazine, the Visual Dictionary, a couple of the video games, Star Wars Insider number 158.
Okay, so there's like a lot of
Yeah, so
resources
it's-
out there for you to go check that out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Because again, this is one of those things where you always heard the game reference, but you really didn't know quite what it meant. So if you want that, go check it out. Let's go ahead and jump to the next article, though, since we've already reached the bottom of the Lando article. We're talking about
Emilia
Quira.
Clarke.
Yeah, Quira. Kira?
Kira.
Q-I-apostrophe-R-A is Emilia Clarke's character. And what we're trying to figure out leading into these articles is she a love interest? Is she a politician? Is she some kind of royalty?
It sounds like she's a combination of the first two.
Okay.
So reading the article, it sounds like Kira and Han have known each other for a long time. They talk to Emilia a little bit about, as a strong female character, how do you kind of do it? And she talks about how she plays her role a little more trying to navigate the system where Princess Leia kind of rebelled against it. But it sounds like it's more of a love interest for Han than an opponent.
Which I think makes sense, right? I mean, there's no way this guy didn't have previous love interest before Leia. We know about Sana from the comic series, the main Star Wars line. They had a small thing, but they were really more like smuggling pals. It makes sense.
So it goes into more depth as I'm getting down to the bottom of the article. They grew up as comrades, essentially, is what Emilia Clarke says. They grew up as pals, as partners in crime. There is obviously the romantic side of things, but they grew up together. They were kids together. And the beautiful thing about the Han Solo story is that it's highlighting all of the most brilliant aspects of Han Solo, the character, and characterizing those aspects and the character. She says character a lot. So she helps him become who he is.
Which is interesting. So maybe that's a little bit about
I bet she dies.
Stop being selfish and go have a heart. And I think there's a fair chance. I mean, that's how these movies tend to go. Someone usually dies.
Yeah, I kind of, I mean, I'm okay if I'm wrong with it, but I'm thinking maybe this character dies.
Could she die, and that's what makes him bitter about life? Especially when he rolls around and he hears this, princess needs saving.
Exactly.
Because that's like a thing. Like, guys.
Or some sort of betrayal or something where, it's like, oh, great, another royalty type kind
She
of thing,
sleeps with Beckett. They have to have a showdown because Beckett, slept with Han's girl. And then Han has to kill him. So now it's like he lost his girl, lost his mentor. He's gonna steal the Falcon and go. That's how it's going to go. Well, he'll win the Falcon, and then he'll go.
I really hope we see that scene where he wins the Falcon.
I think you have. I think everything is indicating that you will.
I think we will.
But let's not get too excited, right? Because we all thought we were going to see Luke Skywalker in Episode 8 slaughter like 60 stormtroopers, and that did not happen. In fact, he slaughtered no stormtroopers. Anything else from Emilia Clarke? Because I feel bad. Her background is Game of Thrones, but I just don't care. Like, I don't have much interest in that character, and I'm not being sexist. I don't. If she's the romantic element in this movie, that's great. I want her to have more of a role than that. I don't want her just to be arm candy. I want her to be, a Rey or a Jyn Erso in the sense that, she has her own agenda that she's in it for herself in this regard.
I think she'll have her own agenda, but I definitely think in regards to plot and story, I think something has to happen here. So a betrayal, her death or something. That kind of, because Han Solo in A New Hope is, obviously visually, very different individual that we're going to be seeing in this movie.
Right.
You know, so I mean, we're talking. This is a 10-year time gap.
Right.
So we got to see.
Although someone I read a rumor recently that they're starting to say that this is actually just 5 years before A New Hope. We don't have this. We don't have the time point on the timeline
This is
confirmed.
true. This is
but
true.
I would hope it's not 5 years before, because that puts it right before Rogue One. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not. I mean, 5 years before would still be a significant amount of time, but still, I would want this like 10 years. I mean, I want like Empire in its prime.
To me, 5 years is not enough time for Han and Lando to develop a solid enough relationship that we see them in. I don't know, that to me it feels like their relationship goes back a decade or two.
So do you think this is going to be a movie where we're going to see the relationship continuing to blossom, and then he wins, the Falcon leaves, and that's where it falls apart?
Yeah, I don't think this is where Han and Lando meet. I think they've known each other for a while.
Okay.
I that's what I would hope to see.
Yeah.
Although maybe we could be wrong, since we know that some of this movie takes place on Corellia. So maybe not. We don't know.
You know, there's a lot of speculation. We'll find out.
Where was Lando born? Do we know? Where's he from? Is that revealed?
I
in the
know
movie
it, but I
somewhere?
can't remember it. While you're looking up that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next story, because I just don't... Is there anything more you want to address in this article?
The only thing else in the article was they talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge's L337 droid.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, because we're getting a female droid, and we haven't really had a female droid up to this point, which I think is still stupid that we have like gender assigned droids, like droids are droids.
No, I can think of one.
But what? Oh, is it the Old Republic one? No.
No.
It's
and
the protocol droid in Jabba's palace.
Nope.
No,
No, which one?
And Attack of the Clones, the diner.
Oh my gosh, that stupid thing at Dexter's Diner.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Someone here to see you, Dex.
Oh man, that was also like the worst shoehorned reference to American Graffiti that Lucas did ever thrown in.
I know,
love George. I love you,
know,
George, but
but-
that was rough. Okay.
But she's supposed to be like a self-improving droid. So she's going to be like, every time she wanders around, she'll pick up something and like attach it to her.
She kind of looks like RoboCop. Like, did you not get those vibes when you first saw the image of the droid? I mean, it's a little RoboCop, which I don't have a problem with, but that's what I
The
thought
head
of.
kind of reminds you of that.
The helmet.
The android thing from Power Rangers, though.
Okay, I can roll with that.
Alpha 5.
Yeah.
I can roll with that. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing that droid and how that's executed. It looks... So she is Lando's co-pilot, is essentially what I'm there to understand, because that's the shot we get in.
She's Lando's droid, not necessarily co-pilot, but she goes around assembling and improving herself with scraps of other droids.
That's kind of cool.
So maybe this means that several times we'll see her looking a little different.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
She's going to find a scrap of K2 and just...
David, put a little bit more excitement in your voice, because we're still talking about Han Solo. We're talking about the rogues of Solo, a Star Wars story, and Jesse. You know, you're a Mandalorian loyalist. You know, Mandalorians can be good in nature, and they can also be greedy. But what are you thinking about when we think about the rogues of the Solo movie? What has you most excited after reading this article?
I just... again, the Western feel of everything. The whole criminal underworld has always been something that's intrigued me about Star Wars as a whole. So the fact that this movie is kind of, finally shedding a light onto that really just, it makes me happy. Seeing characters like, there's... You see some of these characters. You see like the tribal mercenaries or whatever you want to call them at this point. And I don't know if they have an official name. I haven't caught that yet. Or even Beckett and we see a large variety of characters already just from the trailer, and it's just like their outfits and just what little you can tell their personalities definitely fits this atmosphere.
I agree with you, and I'm excited about, Beckett for one example. I want to learn more about Beckett, and maybe he's connected more throughout the galaxy. Because right now, we don't, he could be just in this specific region of the galaxy, but he can also be like really well connected to like the underworld in Coruscant, and he could be connected in Tatooine and along the Outer Rim. So the trade line. So very interested to see what happens there with Beckett. What I think is interesting. You wanted to say something real quick?
Yeah. Well, to me, this is the first time that we actually kind of get hints that Beckett might be a space pirate, because they even refer to him as like a Long John Silver type character.
Well, we know that
kinda neat.
Lawrence and his son John Kasdan, who co-wrote this script, they went back and reread Treasure Island before diving into the script writing process.
Really?
So I think that's really interesting, and that really supports what David is saying, and what a lot of people are believing is we're going to get like a true space pirate. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Lando or Han referred to as a space pirate at some point in the original trilogy? Like, I think I remember that.
Lando to Han, you pirate or something.
Yeah. When Han lands on at Cloud City.
At Bespin, yeah.
Come here, you pirate.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I'm just saying pirates have been referenced in the Star Wars galaxy before, and of course, if you watch Clone Wars, if you watch Rebels,
Hondo
pirates are Hondo, all them, right?
Oh,
So I've watched
I'd
that
love to
series.
see Hondo on live screen.
I want Cad Bane on screen, but that is a conversation for another time. If you want to send us a tweet, a question about Cad Bane being in the movie, I'll put that on the show.
I think he's dead.
Stop it. You're pissing me off with that statement. Let's go ahead and keep going with this article.
We get to learn a little bit about Val.
Right, which we don't
No,
we just see that one shot of her.
We don't know anything about her so far.
Danny
until this
Newton's
article.
character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, even still, we don't know, but she's tied to Beckett. She's probably Beckett's number 2 is what I get out of this article. But she's not impressed with Han Solo when she meets him. And they specifically refer to him. She's not impressed with the Corellian pilot. So maybe that's kind of how they hook up, like Baby Driver, where Kevin Spacey's character goes find... what's his name, Baby, to be the driver for him. Maybe that's how they get hooked up.
Do you think she's racist against Corellians? Like, are we going to have, like, racist stuff going on in the galaxy?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know, like on that level, because I mean, you've got humans that are the most in the lore, the most
Humanoids, yeah.
Humanoids and everything, and humans are the most. I don't know. They're
If you had a pie
percentage.
chart, of the galaxy, humans make up the greatest
majority of the population of the galaxy compared to alien races.
I think it's more of a trust issue because John Kasdan even says she's a little skeptical of this kid. Mm-hmm. So obviously she's looking at him not as a professional pilot,
but a rookie.
Yeah.
And she's more seasoned, and she doesn't know who this new face is.
And if they're going to pull off some sort of space piracy job, maybe she wants a little more comfort knowing the job's going to go off without a hitch, as opposed to trusting this kid.
Dude, Paul Bettany. We know nothing about this character until now, but I remember getting that photo of him with Ron Howard on set and thinking, he's literally one of my favorite comedic actors of all time. I cannot wait to see the role they put him in this movie. We get a better glance of maybe who that character is in Solo, talking about goals. David, did anything stick out with you?
He's sort of a combination of class and swagger and real danger, which John Kasdan says will be a fun thing for us.
And I wonder if that's going to be, is he going to be an obstacle in Han's way, or is he going to be another character? I'm wondering if he's going to be opposition, or is this another mentor that Han can latch onto and steal, personality traits from?
I think he's going to be the antagonist of the movie. I
Really?
think he's going to be the bad guy.
Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So even after talking about Beckett, even talking about Bikos or whatever that thing's name is, we're saying that Paul Bettany's character actually has the potential to be...
I think he will be the antagonist of the movie.
His past really doesn't have him as the bad guy. Really? Does it? Does he play like... Because I know his background is in sci-fi.
Oh, his the actors... No, he's normally a good guy or a side character or
Right.
a butler type figure.
I think
Tony
the only
Stark.
time... Because, he's, a caring individual, in the Avenger movies... where he plays Vision. I think back when he was in
But maybe
A Knight's Tale, he was kind of two-faced, but he eventually helped the lead cast.
But maybe that's what they're going for. If they're looking for somebody who's going to be a villain of high class and swagger, maybe you need that person who's typically playing the mentor, the one who comes off to your face as...
Isn't Paul Bettany being the protagonist a little of a curveball?
Antagonist?
I'm sorry. Because didn't they write out a character, and they wrote out one character, and they brought him in. And the rumor was that he was just going to be some side comedic relief. He's the baddie? They got rid of... I'm blanking on the actor's name. I can see his face, like Williamson or something. They got rid of him. They bring in Paul Bettany, and he's not a side. He is the baddie.
Kasdan says we've seen the sleazy take on a gangland chief with Jabba the Hutt, but Voss will give us the handsome version of a figure who has found great success by breaking the rules, but isn't the kind to get his hands dirty.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really good. And in case you can hear it, my neighbor decided that they're going to start vacuuming, so that's really exciting. Let's go on to the next topic in Real Talk. I think that was really great. A conversation about what Anthony Bresnikan gave us in those Entertainment Weekly stories, and I look forward to seeing more. I'm sure Empire is going to drop something in the near future, and we're going to have one more trailer for Solo, the trailer we're still waiting for, right? Because we got the teaser trailer. There's one more that we're hoping to get before this Memorial Day release, so it'll be exciting to see that. I want to flip gears now to Bob Iger, because it's now coming out, right? That's the next topic in Real Talk, is Bob Iger. He has confirmed that there are multiple Star Wars shows in development for Disney's streaming service in 2019. And we know that there is a next series for Dave Filoni and friends, right? Because Rebels is wrapping up this March. But there's multiple series. Now, could this be Forces of Destiny getting thrown on there?
Yeah.
These it sounds like, from what we're reading, that these are all new concepts that are being thrown on that streaming service. You know, Jesse, initial reaction, and I know that we're kind of running heavy here, so just initial reaction to hearing that Bob Iger is saying there's multiple efforts right now for the streaming service.
It's exciting because there's a lot that they can pull from and reference and everything. I caution don't go completely overboard, and you know, we were kind of talking about this pre recording and everything about, like, there's been rumors about an Old Republic like series. Those games and the story that's presented in those games, I don't know if we actually need to see those on film, like those actual story arcs that are already there, play out on film.
Right.
And if they're introducing maybe a minor side story involving some of those characters, okay. But at the same time, I do kind of expect some original content. I would rather than maybe touch on some existing characters that fans love. Again,
I want to get away from that because I think the Han Solo movie is a perfect example of, while I'm still excited for that movie, stop playing with characters that we already have and we keep the mystery there. Go to a different point in time on the timeline. Go to Knights of the Old Republic. You want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe create some new characters within that timeline, but maybe not mess so much with existing characters.
Or bring in EU characters that we liked, like Dash Render.
Kyle Katarn.
Remold those characters.
Maybe Kyle doesn't steal the Death Star plans anymore, but he was a great character.
Well, now correct me if I'm wrong. Kyle Katarn was involved with the stealing of the second Death Star plans, right? He was the first one.
He's in the original Dark Forces game. He is responsible for stealing the first Death Star plans.
So that's not canon anymore. But you could give him the same. He could do the same thing, but for the second Death Star. Because, many Bothans died. Maybe he makes a bad decision, and that's why they all die.
Maybe. And again, there's tons of characters out there that are kind of floating around. I mean, we lost a lot. So let's go from that point there. David, we've talked about how they could go in a couple of different places with all this content. We've talked about different characters they could resurrect, bring back into the mix. And we talked about last week how Lucasfilm Story Group is looking to bring in more EU characters back into the mix. Is this oversaturation, though? Multiple projects being developed for the streaming service. We now have a Rian Johnson trilogy. We now have the Game of Thrones creators in the mix. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Foreshadowing.
So
deep tease.
I'm not worried about oversaturation.
Okay.
What I'm worried about is the quality of the product that they're going to put out.
Okay.
I
think that's valid.
I think it was Family Guy had a joke that Stewie said something like, when he becomes the president of the world, the first thing he'll do is ban straight-to-DVD Disney movies or something like that. But you look at some of the straight-to-TV things that Disney's done, and they're not necessarily the highest caliber. Lion King, one of the best Disney animated films, and then they have Lion King 1.5 and Lion King 2, and they weren't as good.
So terrible.
And
Toy Story, another one in there.
There was okay. I had to defend Toy Story because I love that freaking franchise.
Toy Story 3 was nuts.
1, 2, and 3 was great. 1, 2, and 3 was great. There was that smaller animation short that they did was hot garbage.
But you see what I mean.
I get your point.
Disney's known for either being phenomenal or putting crap on TV, and there's very little middle ground there. So if they're going to give me the streaming service with all of these extra television programs, whether they're live action, whether they're animated, they need to make sure the caliber is as good as they can get it. And Bob Iger gives me a little bit of hope because he says that the level of talent in these shows will be, quote, rather significant. So that tells me that they're hopefully getting some heavy hitters in. They're hopefully taking the time and the money to actually put the effort into these streaming shows. And Disney's taking a big gamble with this video streaming service anyway. So they need to make sure they hammer it out and really nail it good when they hit the ground running, or else the whole thing's going to flop.
I'm really excited to see what happens, and if you're really excited to see what happens with all these different projects that Bob Iger is talking about, be sure you drop us a comment below specifically about those projects, what you think they might entail. I've got a feeling that we're going to get some Knights of the Old Republic movies. More on that in just a couple of minutes. Let's jump to the next topic, next segment of our show. No, we just finished Real Talk. We're going to Pages, Pixels, Pieces.
Oh, yeah.
And we got some comic talk here that we want to mention. The first being... And it's really a quick Pages, Pixels, Pieces this week because we have Star Wars 43 that dropped last week. I want to talk about that for a little bit in that story. Wrapping up the Ashes of Jetta arc. And then we'll go into mentioning what's coming up this coming week, which is the Thrawn #1 and Star Wars Darth Vader #11. Star Wars 43. I've read it. I believe David has read it. Jesse, that's okay because you have even mentioned before how the main line doesn't really get you excited. You like the shorter miniseries, and that's totally cool.
Yeah.
There's a large majority of, I would say there's a large portion of the fan base that is in the same boat as you. It's hit and miss, the main line, but it's these 5-issue shorts that really get us going. I was about to say something different, and it would have been not appropriate for the kids watching the show. Let's start with Star Wars 43. This is Salvador Larroca on the art, Gillen on the Kieron Gillen on the writing aspect of it, and of course he is new to the Star Wars line, Ashes of Jetta being his first arc. It ends here. This was the 6th and final part of Ashes of Jetta. And David, I want to get your reaction to this comic real quick. I think, though, the story, in case you aren't following this line, this arc, the Leviathan is this mining ship that's on Jetta. And, Luke, Leia, and Han are on the planet, and they're trying to take down the Imperial operation, and they run into Queen Trios, who is this individual that seems to be working in part with the Empire. She kind of has her people there operating this ship, and they're trying to mine for the Empire. And it turns out that everything that we thought we knew about the Queen and her people is kind of going to work in the favor of the rebellion. And we're going to say spoilers here. I don't want to give it all away, but what this story arc does give us is a new ally for the rebellion. But I think the greatest thing it gives us two things. One is this character, Queen Trios. I think we're going to see more of her down the line in future comics, maybe in a canon novel. But I think she's going to be a player in the rebellion effort. The second thing is the development of Han. We spent a lot of time in the show already talking about Han Solo and his origins and how he becomes that scruffy-looking nerf herder that we get in the original trilogy. What I like about this comic, and especially this arc, is that we are seeing how Han Solo transforms from that selfish guy in A New Hope to that guy who can open his heart to Leia in Empire Strikes Back. The character development is really rich. However, those two things aside, which I think are great things, the art still makes me lose focus when I read these comics. Salvador Larroca is a talented artist. I'm not trying to take anything away, but the more I consume his hyper-realistic depictions of actors as the character in comic form...
It's the faces.
It's the faces.
I'm looking at a panel right now that looks like a really bad Photoshop job.
Okay, so David right now is looking at the last panel of the comic. Can you spin this around real quick so Jesse can see? It looks like a bad poster. You know what I'm saying? Like this, and the background.
See, I would rather behind David here is kind of a Loot Crate exclusive comic here.
It's part of our giveaway. It's part of the giveaway that we still have to give away.
See, what we're looking at, this doesn't look good to me. It looks off, but what I've got in front of me, that looks so much better.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but this is part of the comics that we're giving away in our 300 sub contest giveaway that we're about to announce here in the next 24 hours. And it's more of a painting, and it's more focused on Harrison Ford. There is some critique. You can spin that thing back around. There is some critique that Salvador is trying to start blending in Alden Ehrenreich into his depiction of Han Solo now to kind of make it blend a little bit more with what we're getting with Solo. But to me, that makes no sense at all because Alden Ehrenreich is pre A New Hope. This story is taking place during A New Hope and Empire. It makes no sense for that connection to be made. My thing is, there's two great characters in this arc being displayed, but that art is still taking me out of it.
But can we also show the second half? We're showing the picture of that we just looked at.
Yeah, we can put the picture up.
Can we look at the second half of that page too, where the Millennium Falcon is flying kind of like away but towards Jetta? Because that is just such a beautiful piece right there. That's like poster worthy.
I think Salvador, where he succeeds, is that shot that you mentioned. But remember, a couple issues ago, you even brought up again. They showed the Jetta that had just been like destroyed.
Yeah, and it was gorgeous.
The best panels in the series have been of Jetta because it's the fact that this planet is still in existence, Jesse, but it's got a huge chunk blown out of it.
It's like a crater. I mean, it's the same thing with Scarif. I mean, they didn't blow Scarif up, but it's got a pretty big hole in it.
And you know what I never thought of, and maybe this is just like a lack of knowledge and understanding, but I never thought like you could continue to like function on the planet that got destroyed. But I guess that's because it's a single reactor kind of thing. So like this part of the planet is still survivable, but like you get over to the whole, like the crater, and it's like, I don't know, lava and pain and suffering. I don't know.
The only thing where you kind of get into the kind of the fiction part, I mean, from what we know, real world, if something like that happened to Earth,
Yeah.
It would have launched the entire planet into a ice age
Oh,
and
okay.
everything. So I mean, it could have essentially both Scarif and Jetta would be dead planets eventually because. I mean, then again, this is future technology, so maybe they can prevent or atmospheric cleanse or something.
I think
like
in a
that.
galaxy where you can have space poppins, you can have inhabitable planets that have had a third of it just blown to smithereens.
You get what I'm saying, though? I mean, definitely, I think there would be some environmental impacts on both these planets.
I'd agree. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Before we move on to what's coming out this coming week, David, did you have anything you wanted to say about 43?
Not particularly.
Okay, so
not my favorite line.
It's not his favorite line, but you know what? It is his favorite line. Darth Vader,
number 11.
Number 11. It's a new arc, and this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of possibilities here. In case you don't remember, issue number 10 ended with the death of Jocasta Nu. Spoiler alert, sorry. But ended with the death of Jocasta Nu, and it's I thought it was a really great finale to that storyline, in all honesty. Number 11 here is a new arc, and it looks like there's a bounty on Vader's head, which to me is a fascinating concept that an agent of the Empire, especially Darth Vader, who at this point not many people are aware of. You know, we know that in the last issue, the clones didn't even really know who Vader was. So I'm very fascinated to see who puts a hit on the Empire, or on Vader specifically. Is it a rogue Jedi? Is it a small rebellion sect that's already trying to plot against the Empire? I'm very fascinated. Is it someone within the Empire plotting against Vader? Because we know in the 2015 Vader run, he had some opposition internally. Now, of course, that's a New Hope moving forward era in that 2015 run, and right now we're still in a very immediate post Return of the Revenge of the Sith era. But I think of all the possibilities of who could be putting this hit on, I think it's from within. David, what do you think? You're just excited to get a new comic.
I spaced out and was looking at something else.
No, it's fine. It's okay. Are you excited for Darth Vader number 11?
I am excited for Darth Vader number 11.
Good job, Pookie.
Were you asking me who would put a hit on him? Is that what you're asking?
Who where would that most likely come from? Because it's like we don't know about Vader.
The Inquisitors.
Do you think that would be bull? I mean, I can see like the Inquisitors trying to commit a mutiny since Vader just kind of showed up and was given control of the Inquisitorius organization, or not organization, but club, whatever you want to call them.
So who actually knows about Darth Vader right now?
Palpatine.
We know that Palpatine knows. So it could be Palpatine just because he wants to be a prick and decides that he wants to put Vader to a test.
Yep.
So hey, we'll just put like 15 people on killing him and see if he lives. It could be the Grand Inquisitors. Their motivation would be that they don't like him. I mean, there was that one panel where he chops off the guy's was it arm or his leg or something?
Yeah, it's just a leg.
Yeah, to teach him a lesson, one that he'll never forget.
The droid knew because he did the bioscan, but the droid got destroyed. Jocasta knew she's dead.
Yeah. Most of the stormtroopers that he's encountered have died. The pirates he's encountered have died.
Timeline is a little shifted here, but in the Thrawn novel, we know that Thrawn knows who Vader is.
But does he know right off the bat, or does it take some time? Because we're still, like by my count, we're within a month of him actually becoming Darth Vader.
I would actually say the most plausible thing would be Palpatine convincing the Inquisitors to do this, because it's kind of the Sith thing too. I mean,
test them.
Yeah, I mean, look how the beginning of the series started off with, "Where's your lightsaber?" And it's almost like, you lost your lightsaber. Oh, great, so it's almost like Palpatine is now almost like retraining Vader.
I think that's
in
really
many
cool
aspects. So I would actually expect that Palpatine to have some element.
And that's a cool observation. And we've kind of already seen this once before, because a couple issues back, remember, Palpatine had the Grand Inquisitor go after the intruder of the Jedi Temple Library. It was Vader. Vader almost defeats him. Okay? He asked the Emperor, was that a test? And he goes, yes, but did you ever think you were going to lose? So the Emperor manipulates Vader a lot. I don't think it's a true mentorship. It is manipulation to achieve ultimate power. I mentioned Thrawn just a moment ago. That's the other comic we're getting here in, this coming week, this Wednesday. It is Thrawn #1, the comic adaptation of the novel, which I think I will really enjoy. I like the novel. You've heard me say that it's a slow read before, but I think visually I want to see Thrawn's story. I think issue #1 is going to be that first couple of chapters where he's just trying to jump along on board the Imperial ship that visits his planet, and he sneaks away, and he eventually meets up with the Empire and joins there. I'm really dumbing it down because there's a lot of details I could give away if you haven't read the novel. Also, we'd be here all week. It's a long book. I mean, like, the book is it's right here. I mean, it's not the thickest book, but I mean, there is so much to this Thrawn novel. I'm really excited for a comic adaptation as opposed to like a comic adaptation of the movies. That's completely different. We talked about that last week. David, if you can you real quick pull up the show notes and can you mention who is the writer-artist combo on this Thrawn story for us real quick?
Written by Jody Houser.
Which is the guy... No, Jody... Jody did Rogue One, right?
Rogue One adaptation.
Yes, okay.
And drawn by Luke Ross, who did Star Wars Darth Maul, Star Wars The Force Awakens adaptation.
So I don't care about that last credit, but Darth Maul, visually, cover-wise, and in panel, was arguably my favorite miniseries. I mean, it hit on all cylinders, so I'm looking forward to that. So I think this novel adaptation, is in really good hands. I'm looking forward to it. Let's go ahead to the next segment of the show. We have Stash It or Blast It. And
it's one of my favorite segments.
Yeah, it is. And so we're now getting news, and I want to make sure I always get their names wrong. So David, you have to bail me out here. But the Game of Thrones writers,
Benioff and Weiss.
Nice. It's just been confirmed that they are going to be doing several Star Wars movies. It was just announced. Kathleen Kennedy.
A trilogy.
A trilogy made the announcement. And David, I think you have the statement pulled up from it. I know it was on StarWars.com. We'll get to that in just a second.
Do you want their statement or Kathleen's statement?
Kathleen's would be fine.
Okay.
Kathleen's would be fine. Honestly, we can do both. Do you have Kathleen's pulled up?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Because Kathleen gives some really good insight into this decision.
Speaking about the duo, she says that David and Dan are some of the best storytellers working today. Their command of complex characters, depth of story, and richness of mythology will break new ground and boldly push Star Wars in ways I find incredibly exciting.
I think that's great. And before we go on to the statement from Benioff and Weiss, you are a big Game of Thrones fan.
I have 3 franchises or stories that I love. I love Star Wars, obviously, Lord of the Rings, and Game of Thrones. I have read the Game of Thrones books. Weiss and Benioff. I mean, there's things I don't agree with what they did, but I understand why they did it in the terms of for like filmmaking and everything. They tell basically that story fantastic.
It's
Their
not
casting abilities were just spot on. Emilia Clarke, just I could go on and on.
right.
Like
You don't always get a good movie that's been based on a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not an easy task to take a book, especially this. Martin's book is not an easy thing to get through. There's a lot of lineage that keeps me from getting into it. They've adapted this to the screen near flawlessly.
Yeah, and again, just the casting of the actors and everything. I mean, who knew who Kit Harington was before Game of Thrones, kind of thing. So I mean, it's one of those things where like I have a lot of confidence in their abilities. Though here, like I'm excited about it, but at the same time, I've seen actually some like Twitter posts like we don't need like a rated R. Star Wars.
Yes, we do.
And I actually think yes, we do, because if you want to capture the gritty essence and the darker side of the galaxy, you need writers and directors and creators who have experience showing that stuff.
I absolutely
I'm not
agree.
saying we need to see blood splattering all over. Like, I'm not talking like seeing Game of Thrones in a Star Wars, universe. You just have to look at their skill set and their ability to bring the lore on screen and everything and do it correctly.
I totally do what you say, and I agree with you. And I'm a firm believer they should have left Revenge of the Sith rated R. They should have let that movie be a true rated R film. I think the majority of fans like that film more. I think fans, especially older generation, would just the amount of money a rated R Star Wars movie would make would be incredible.
And I'll be honest, if they're on board for multiple projects, I'm still wanting that Boba Fett or a bounty hunter like movie.
See, I
think they would be perfect for it.
I think that's a good idea for a movie, but I think it's because of Game of Thrones. I think a Knights of the Old Republic era trilogy it best suits them.
As long as we're getting I don't mind the use of the era, as long as we're maybe getting kind of like an original story arc with maybe reference to those main characters.
It's probably going to be new characters. Probably new characters in that era.
But more sabers flinging. That's what I want.
You want more lightsabers flinging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
I want to see Go ahead.
I like them.
Yeah.
That's all I was
I want to see I want to see hundreds of Sith and hundreds of Jedi on screen at some point. I want to have a great battle.
That scene in Attack of the Clones when all the Jedi land on Geonosis.
Right.
I want that, but not shitty.
I think that's a really fair request.
It's for the trailer for the Old Republic, but you need to see the Deceived trailer because you basically get that.
Deceived trailer?
Yeah, I mean it's old, kind of thing, but yeah, you basically get like a crap ton of Sith and a bunch of Jedi clashing.
David, you're not a big Game of Thrones fan.
So I can respect Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And I like the world that they've built. However, I like to get attached to characters, and Martin doesn't. So like
Martin rips them away from you. I understand this pain.
I pick up the first book. There's a couple campers out there north of the wall, and then they get destroyed by the white people. They're dead. Then you pick up with the Starks family, and then I get to the point where Ned Stark's character dies, and I threw
Spoilers.
The book.
Spoilers.
It's been out long enough. I threw the damn book across the room and said no. So I still have the book, and it's got like a dent in the corner of it because I threw it against the wall. So then I'm like, okay, so maybe I can't do that. So we'll just go watch the movie because maybe I won't get attached to the characters because I'm not getting in their mind. I got to episode 7 of the first season, and Sean Bean dies. I should have known that he dies in everything he's in. He dies, and I'm like, nope. I turn off the TV, throw it against the couch, and I walked away. And I
imagine how I felt when I read the Red Wedding.
I can't.
Well, that book did fly across the room.
Well, let's remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Star Wars podcast. So getting back on topic, we both acknowledge that we're fans of Game of Thrones. We're maybe not so much a fan of Game of Thrones, but appreciate the world building. Everything that you said is really good for Star Wars. It's really good for a Star Wars trilogy, and whether it's Bounty Hunter Underworld that you want, or what I think is a better chance of the Knights of the Old Republic era, strap in because they're going to crush it because their writing is phenomenal. Like Jesse said, the casting is phenomenal. And part of that writing, world building. And what do we want with these Star Wars movies? Continued world building. We want to see new species. We want to go on these new adventures. I'm excited for it. And if you are, be sure you let us know in the comments down below. The other topic here in Blaster Stash It, and just to make sure, we all stash that, right?
I'm definitely stashing that, yeah.
Stashing.
We all stash that. So next topic is Lucasfilm, and this is a rumor. Give credit to StarWarsNewsNet.com for us getting this article. The only reason why I know about this is because of them. There has been an attack on Disney and Lucasfilm, more specifically, about a lack of diversity with directors. And to me, yes, no, whatever. I mean, they announced Rian Johnson trilogy, and they announced the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. Where are the women? Well, I think they're in talks. There's on the surface, before we even dive into the story, you have to be on another planet to think that Disney and Lucasfilm are not looking for inventive directors, looking for female directors, looking for whatever diversity you want to see in a director. They're looking for that. But they've got to be careful, because Gareth Edwards did Rogue One. I think he did a tremendous job. He gave a first draft story that he thought Disney wanted. It didn't work for them. They ended up letting him kill everybody off. They brought in somebody to help with the reshoots. Fine, okay? But they felt like Gareth Edwards didn't deliver. And so...
See, I would beg to differ. I thought he did a phenomenal job.
I don't think the way it was covered in the media, I just don't think that Gareth Edwards is going to get another chance at a Star Wars movie, because I kind of felt like he got thrown under the bus a little bit. But I think because of that, they don't want to go to these younger, innovative directors right now, because look what happened with Lord of Miller and Han Solo. Look at the situation they're in now.
It's not that they didn't do, like, it's not that they're not talented. They're talented in a whole different spectrum. If you're wanting a certain direction for a lore and franchise, you gotta handpick these properly.
And I acknowledge that we're still only talking about male directors. The time for female directors, I think you could have said, was 10 years ago. For me, I just want a good movie. So whoever can give me a good Star Wars movie is who should direct the movie. And I don't need your director pool for Star Wars movies to be 25% white, 25% black, 25% Hispanic, 25% other European. I just want like good storytelling. And if it's going to be if it's a female directed movie, like, awesome. We've talked about it on the show before. We talked about it on the show before about how there's a lot of options out there. We've talked about how Lucasfilm has had conversations recently with female directors. So I just think it's interesting that this rumor comes out and like makes a splash on the web after Disney has kind of been raked through the coals, or Lucasfilm has been raked through the coals recently.
I think one of the things is right now it's, for me, I'm going to try to tread carefully here. Lately, this has been a going trend on social media where it's just people are constantly attacking the franchise from this standpoint, whether it's an issue with female characters and roles or directors or characters from different ethnic backgrounds. You know what? Leave that crap at the door. This is Star Wars. I want, like you basically said it in the best way possible, I want a good film or a good TV series or something. Like, I don't care where they come from or who they are, what they look like. If you can deliver the role as an actor or as a writer or as a director, that's what I want. Okay, now we just got through with Last Jedi and everything and dealing with issues in terms of the basic storyline. I think most everybody can agree that's not really what they were wanting out of Episode 8.
No,
that is a problem.
Lucasfilm is in panic mode right now because they were not prepared. The company was not prepared for the feedback that they got.
My point is, when concerning this topic, this complaint, shut up.
Okay.
Is my shortest answer. Like, let people, because, I mean, again, they were when they announced Weiss and Benioff taking over, I saw a whole slew. Oh, here's a whole nother set of, this.
I won't tell you to shut up. I think if you feel a certain way, you can feel that certain way.
You are entitled to your opinion just like mine.
Thank you. Thank you. We should say that.
I want that, clear. But at the same time, though, don't look at what if they're male or female or whatever. Look at their creative ability. That should be the number one thing you're looking at when they choose a director for a project on anything, Marvel,
David,
or anything.
I just want a good movie. Jesse wants social justice warriors to back the hell off of Star Wars. Where do you lie?
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Jesse, that I want them to pick directors based on their talent and their history.
I want a good movie.
Because I want a good movie. But out of curiosity, as you guys were talking, I pulled up a list of popular female directors, and a list from the Collider popped up, and we've used some of their stories before.
Yep.
And I'm reading through this, and almost all of them are TV directors. And then the gal who did Zero Dark 30 a couple years ago, and then Patty Jenkins. And that's it. So there's like a couple names that I knew the movies that they did, but only really one.
Zero Dark was. I enjoyed Zero Dark.
But here's my thing.
So so to me, it's like, I don't think this is a Disney issue. I think this is a Hollywood issue. And is it because women are more interested in television directing?
I would
is
say
it because there's fewer opportunities.
I think that's a point. And I think if Lucasfilm wants to bring in more female directors, I think that's fine. But give them another movie before they do a Star Wars movie, because I don't think you can go straight from television to doing a high budget film. And Star Wars is a high budget film. You need to have a movie under your belt, get the experience of working on a movie set, and then, okay, you proved yourself here, now you get a Star Wars movie. But you cannot give a Star Wars movie to any director, male or female, white or black, Mexican, whatever. You can't just hand them a Star Wars movie and go, make it. Like, that's a risk.
David makes a fantastic point, because if you look across all entertainment platforms, okay, I'm not saying there isn't an issue here. It's just we're still in that transition period to where these old gender stereotypes and norms, like, they are changing. They do need to change, but at the same time, be patient. I mean, that's if there's only 5 female directors, and that's all there is. I'm just throwing a number out there, mind you.
You're fine.
That is a very limited pool. Okay, and if only 2 of those, 5 female directors are actually talented enough to do a Star Wars film in Lucasfilm and Disney's mindset, but what if they don't want to do a Star Wars film? What if that's not their passion or their interest? And so what do you do then?
Right. I think that's a valid point.
Also, look at how many blockbuster films are released each year. I just pulled it up. There's about 800 total films that are released on an annual basis. But how many of those are really like blockbusters, big ones like a Star Wars, a Marvel, a franchise, one that people have a large following for? Maybe 15 a year, maybe 20 if you count some of the new ones that come out, like Academy Award-winning stuff. So if you've got like 20 big movies that come out each year, and the people that they go back to get to direct are going to be the Abrams, the Johnsons, the Trevorrows with Jurassic World, you're using the same directors over and over, and they just pick a new movie each year. How do you get new blood in there? And that's a challenge, because when you hire Abrams, you know what you're getting. A good movie with lens flares and camera shaking. When you hire Trevorrow, you're getting a visually spectacular movie with a mediocre plotline. When you hire Lord and Miller, you know that you're getting a goofy comedy. So people get their niche, and that's who they go to, because they're the expert, because they've done this type of movie before. Yeah. So breaking into that, I think, would be a challenge.
I think that's a really great observation, and a series of observations you both made. And I just think about when we go now to blast it or stash it, I think I have to stash. Of course, I'm going to stash that Lucasfilm is in talks right now with diverse directors.
Yes, yeah. In that regards, yes. I'm kind of like, there's a 2-part answer to this, to where I stash that, but at the same time, I'm going to blast people just slamming, again, Weiss and Benioff for this, or Disney or Lucasfilm, because it's like, I get it, I really do get it, but at the same time, like, you have to acknowledge the talent base there. There is a reason why they choose these people, but at the same time, again, if you're only looking at a limited number of female directors or directors with different ethnic background, that's a very small pool, and that's a larger issue. That is more on a Hollywood level, not so much on Lucasfilm or Disney.
I can roll with that. David, what are you kind of on the same page with us?
I am. Okay. So I don't know if I'd say I'd stash it. I would blast the fact that they're looking for diversity just for the sake of diversity, if that's what they're doing. But if they're looking for diversity because they're going to get a better product, something more entertaining, more watchable, I'm for it.
Yeah, I'll stash the diversity as long as it's proven talent. You know what I'm saying?
As long as it's moving the lore and the franchise forward in a positive light.
Yeah, stash diversity.
100% stashing
Stash diversity, just they have to be proven directors, either way. Let's go on to one of our favorite segments, Fan Comlink. Time to tap the Fan Comlink. We have a question this week from Lord Vicus on Twitter, and he's talking about Benioff and Weiss, actually. We post on Twitter about, what's your initial reaction? He says, personally, I think it would be better to be part of an Old Republic show. That way they could cover the events before KOTOR happens. That sets up Raven Chiss and Alec as on their paths to becoming Darth Revan and Darth Malak, giving us a better and closer feel for the characters. Now, we somewhat touched about this earlier in the show, but maybe taking familiar characters and bringing them and intertwining them in the story, maybe we get new characters in that era, and we can, reference the characters that we know and love. But Jesse, since you're the one that knows a lot about the Knights of the Old Republic, do you think this is the best angle? Because keep in mind, I think the majority of Star Wars fans don't know about the Knights of the Old Republic era. They're not very educated on the matter. And if you have these two guys who are so incredibly talented with their own trilogy, I would say just tell me the story of Revan and Malak. Tell me about those people, because a lot of us don't know about those people. And imagine seeing them slaughter on screen.
I'm going to focus mainly more on Revan now. In the Old Republic lore, Darth Revan was a Jedi who turned Sith, who was then kind of like rescued from it, became Jedi, but then kind of become disenfranchised with it, kind of like how Luke was kind of like, I'm...
Back and forth.
Yeah. So Revan ends up kind of in between, and in the story arc, okay, and this is actual official story arc for this character, given the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and Star Wars The Old Republic MMO. Okay, so I mean, I'm sorry if you haven't played those games. This information's been out there for years at this point.
It's also not canon anymore.
Well, they were never really potentially canon to begin with. Some insight on this, just because I am a video gamer and everything. I have made, some small connections into the gaming industry. One in particular did work for BioWare as a community manager on Star Wars The Old Republic. And yeah, one of her comments was... It was a little upsetting when, Disney acquired, and then it was definitely for sure that, the game that she was working on was definitely not canon anymore. However, I'd like to point out that anything that they do in that game has to go through the Lucasfilm story board. It has to be approved. Great example for an expansion. They wanted to feature a Star Destroyer from the Old Republic era crashing and everything. They were told no, and then 2 months later, we got the Force Awakens trailer with the crashed Star Destroyer. Okay, so that's kind of how close they work with that story group and everything. And at this point, the other thing is I'd like to note is, that Lucasfilm, that stamp, for a while it was missing on the credits for that game series. It's back on there. Okay, so I'm not sure what's changed or what's official with that on that regards, but concerning this character, if they decide to go, okay, yeah, this is canon, what's in this game will be canon. So that's where you have to tread carefully if you're going to make a Old Republic era game, because you can't produce a live film and change that story, that existing story that gave birth to that character.
Well, you might be able to, because, again, they're going to take stuff from the past and expanded universe, and they're going to allow it to influence certain things with canon storytelling. We see this with Thrawn. Thrawn's story is completely, for right now, is different, because we're learning about him in the Rebel era, whereas he was not introduced in the EU until after Return of the Jedi. So, David, let's switch gears over to you, though. Because let's go to this fan question in the sense that it's best off, he thinks, that these two directors tackle the Old Republic era. You don't know a whole lot about that era.
I don't, because I know it exists. I had friends who played Knights of the Old Republic. I like the theory behind it, but I never had the game to actually sit down and play it when I was a kid.
But we mentioned earlier in the show the world building that these two individuals have. Benioff and Weiss know how to write, they know how to cast. you want to go somewhere new, and if we're gonna go somewhere new in the Star Wars galaxy, are these two the ones to do it? Are they the ones that best take us to the past?
I think so, because right now we've got two trilogies that they've announced. One is the Johnson trilogy, which we know is going to be new content, and then we also know that we're getting this trilogy, which is also going to be something we haven't seen on screen before. So now we've got two new trilogies that are coming out. They can't both come out in the same timeline. That'd be ridiculous. If they come out during what's going on now in the current trilogy, that gives us 9 movies at the same era, and we don't need that. So I could see one of them going off and doing something in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and I could see the other one going back in time to give us that lore. Could they go further into the future? Absolutely, but we don't know a whole lot about that. And would it be as interesting? Maybe. It depends. Does Rey rebuild the Jedi Order after Luke kind of flopped on it? Do we still have lightsaber-wielding people? Because to me, that's one thing that I love about Star Wars are the sword fights and the sounds and the lights. And if we lose that, I think that's not a good thing. Now, can they do a good Star Wars movie without it? Yes. I would say look at Rogue One, but even then, arguably the best scene is when Vader just destroys and wrecks that hallway.
Yeah.
So if they're going to give us 2 new trilogies, one of them has to give us some lightsaber fighting, and I think the best era to do that would be the Old Republic of some sort.
Quick question. Earlier when we were talking, they were slated for several projects. Did I hear that correctly?
I thought they were slated for several, but the article does say it's a trilogy. But I thought it was 3+.
Let me double check that.
So he's going to double check that real quick. What I'm interested in is I don't think we know at this point if they're theatrical release or for the streaming service. So that's interesting. And my thing is, David mentions the Rey thing. I wonder if they would start tackling the post Episode 9 trilogy now, because they're gonna wait. I would think they're gonna wait a decade. If they're gonna use Rey again, they're gonna use her down the road. I can't imagine them turning around in 2021 with Episode 10. I would want some time to continue there. But I am interested to see how we're gonna get all these movies presented to us. I think that it's assumed the Rian Johnson trilogy will be in theaters, but think about it. You have these 2 trilogies. Now you have multiple shows in development for the streaming service in 2019.
Can I ask you a serious question? This relates to Rian Johnson.
What?
Are you willing to see another Star Wars film from him after how Episode 8 turned out?
I'm fine with seeing a Rian Johnson trilogy that's not part of the saga. I still say this. If he would have done Episode 8 as a standalone movie, I think I would have liked it 10 times more. Okay. But it did not fit the saga visual storytelling. And it didn't match the writing storytelling if you want to be really critical of it. I think it honestly just makes me appreciate The Force Awakens a lot more.
I would think I'd rather see Johnson do something different. So if you are going to continue the main story arc, I would rather say Benninghoff and Weiss would be better.
They do say a new series of movies, not a trilogy.
Not a trilogy. So there's a possible
but a series of movies. So I would say there's at least 2.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even call 2 a series, so maybe that's why I made up the number 3.
I think it's at least 3, maybe 5. I mean, it's somewhere in that wheelhouse. There's a lot of storytelling in the future, and if you think about this last season of Game of Thrones, the episodes are like an hour and a half. They're basically movies.
Yeah, this most previous season was shorter episodic-wise. I think we only had 6 or 7 episodes total. We're not getting that season. Obviously, that's a whole different podcast. But that's kind of the thing they're doing is the last few episodes we get for that franchise I think are hour and a half to 2 hour long episodes.
So with that point, it supports my point, which is I'm not worried about them handling movies and multiple movies because they're essentially doing that on HBO right now. Imagine if you elevate it to the Lucasfilm level and now you're producing content for the big screen. I think I'm excited for it. I have learned my lesson with Last Jedi. I will bottle my excitement until we see the product on screen. Let's jump ahead to the last segment now because we are running a little longer than usual, but it's been a great episode so far. It's been an absolute blast.
Fantastic audio, Dave.
Yeah, our audio has gotten tremendously better. We figured out the problem with our mixer, and there's no hum. You hear warm voices in your ears right now, which is exciting. Staying on target, real quick, round table, David. What has got you jacked for the next week for Star Wars?
Darth Vader 11.
You're going to get it, and we're going to get it in wonderful Mylar. and we need to figure out a way to showcase your comic book collection because you have your first full. Is your short box full now?
No, not quite full. But we need to do another comic book haul from everything we got in Colorado.
We had so many books. I mean, I think I bought like 40 books. So that might not. I mean, we'll break that up. We'll do it though. That sounds good. Jesse, give me one thing that you got your targeting system on right now.
You're gonna hate me for this, but it's cosplay related.
Why would I hate you for it? You can talk about cosplay. You like cosplay.
I kind of reached out to some friends and everything, kind of to address a few issues that I discovered at Wizard World with my kit. That was with my red girth belt, kind of sagging after moving around quite a bit. Which also in some ways addresses the issue that I noticed where the tactical harness, which was holding the ammo belt up, the harness tended to, I don't know, like the straps came like loose. It started to hang, slanted and everything. So if all goes well, I may not need the tactical harness anymore.
That'd be nice.
But I got a few pointers again from some, fellow Mandalorian cosplayers. Mac, thanks, buddy. That's a great idea. He kind of suggested, at the very least, kind of like a little bit of Velcro on the flight suit for the sash, and then he's been kind of having the same issue with his ammo belt, and he had a few ideas there. So
awesome. Well, I'm glad that's working out for you. Yeah. And again, way to crush it at Wizard World. We all had a really good time there.
And David, what's your staying on target?
What's my staying on target? My staying on target is the show related. We're gonna have a little bit of a different look next week, which I'm really excited about.
Ooh.
The thing about what we do is we are clearly a low budget Star Wars talk show podcast.
Low budget with some nice things behind us, though.
We it's just like my personal collection thrown behind us, which is fine. But we are always trying to improve, and we want to make it sound as good as we can. You can hear the audio is the best it's ever been. We have
in months, really. Honestly, yeah.
Different microphones.
Different microphones. We're gonna have a little bit different look.
You say that, and I really hope that it picked up without the hum.
Yeah, if there's a hum. Well, we know that
if there's a hum, you're going to cut
we're
this out.
We're jinxing ourselves.
We know that someone
bad.
upstairs was vacuuming for like a good half hour. I don't know how it takes a half hour to vacuum this apartment. But no, we're going to have a little bit of aesthetics differently here on the table. We're going to have a little bit better. We're going to have upgraded equipment. This is interim, but we're going to have the same microphones, which is nice. Because we've had a few people reach out saying, hey, we get it. You're not doing the audio podcast right now on iTunes, but we like that audio only. And then my response to that is not only do I want you to enjoy it on audio only, but when you're watching on YouTube, I need us to sound good. So we've finally been able to get the right help to get us the right equipment. We identified the issue with our equipment. We've alleviated now, so I'm really excited for that. We also have a website in the works. And what I'd really like is for you to let us know in the comments below what you like about our show and what you would like more of it. Meaning, we talk about this topic or we have this segment, but you'd like to see more of it or you'd like to see it done this way, and maybe we can bring that to you on our website. I think what the website is going to allow us to do is going to be a weekly show that we've done it, but I think it's also going to allow us to have maybe a secondary show where we go in depth with more specific topics. So instead of addressing, on a show where we do like 12 or 13, maybe we're just doing 1 or 2, or maybe just 1, and we're going real in depth with it. There's a lot of pop opportunities there with the website. And of course, there's opportunities for not just myself to be contributing, but maybe, you want to hear David's in-depth thoughts about Darth Vader number 11, or you want to have a monthly or a weekly follow of Jesse's progress with his cosplay. These are different things that we're considering, and we want to know from you. So be sure you comment down below. Make sure you're engaging with us on Facebook. We're going to have a couple Twitter polls in the next week or so asking about the website. Right now, the prototype is about 85% complete. I'm really happy with it. David has seen a little bit of it. Jesse, I'm sorry. I didn't have you over last night drinking wine, so I will show you. I
missed out on wine?
You missed out on wine. But
well, if it makes you feel any better, I don't remember what I saw last night. So
he was pretty comfortable with who he was.
Did you get him drunk?
No.
Okay.
Again, family-friendly show here. So I've rambled a lot, but I hope you can just tell how excited I am that we are progressing well. Very proud of the episode that we just had. Had a great time with you guys, and had a great time with you. Thank you so much for watching episode 28 of Beyond the Blast Doors. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, here on YouTube. Look for our news site. We'll update you on that. And, of course, you can also support the show on Patreon. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you soon.